And a good Talking Tuesday morning to you Birds fans. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here hang with for the next couple hours in the midst of an off season where it's a good week for info and or at least opinion because the NFL team meetings are going on out in Arizona. So we heard from Howie Roseman yesterday. We expect to hear from both Nick Sirianni and Jeff Lurie today, the main movers and shakers of the Philadelphia Eagles. Will they tell us anything? Howie spoke yesterday, and I'll get Johnny Mac's opinion on this in a second. My opinion is no new news. Not surprising. I didn't think Howie was going to have a barn burner of a announcement to make, but I gave you a little bit of the State of the Eagles address, which told us a lot of stuff that we already knew. Or maybe I'm just missing the point on this, John McMullen. Did Howie Roseman say anything that just went over my head that I missed out on?
No, he played the hits. I like to call him. He reiterated, which, for some reason people don't listen to. Offensive, defensive line first. Reiterates that time and time again, but for whatever reason, people don't latch onto it, or at least some people. We kind of knew what went on with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He pretty much confirmed that. Eagles wanted him early. He thought there was more money out there. By the time he circled back, the Eagles had already pivoted towards Darius Slay, James Bradbury. There was only a certain amount of money budgeted for that position. Jalen Hurts. They want an extension done with Jalen Hurts. Big shocker there. Maybe the most interesting thing is the move, because so many people are obsessed with it, the move from Jonathan Gannon to Sean Desai. If you don't believe me, he was asked flat out, are you starting from scratch as far as knowing what kinds of players you want to prioritize? I don't think so, Roseman said. I think that a lot of things that Sean wants to do are things that JG wanted to do. I think that there's a lot of carryover from those positions. I don't think it's dramatic. Same defense, same scheme, different guy running it. And it changes a little bit, as we talked about. Same thing with the play caller. When you shifted from Nick Sirianni to Shane Steichen, it was different, but it's the same offense. You're going to get the same defense. It's going to be a little bit different, but you're going to get the same defense. We talked about the signings, the safety, linebacker positions. He actually used the term lottery tickets when describing the Rashad Pennies and Justin Evanses of the world. And that's what they are. And he made it very clear that, look, they're in a different phase when it comes to roster building, because you have to pay the quarterback. None of this is a surprise, or none of this should be a surprise.
Right.
And that's where the Eagles are. And by the way, most of the betting markets put out their over under win totals, and the Eagles are still a significant contender. 10.5. I think there were 3 teams ahead of them. That's it. And only 1 team in the NFC. So what does that tell you? They came out of this pretty good. They expected to lose certain players. I think I always say the best thing about Howie Roseman as a GM is the contingency stuff. When plan A doesn't go right, like his plan A was, we're going to get CJ back. Didn't go right, and he pivoted. A lot of GMs sort of freeze when they have to pivot, because nothing ever goes 100%. And he knew he was going to lose Javon. He knew he was going to lose Isaac. And, he knew. I didn't know he was going to lose TJ. They just didn't have interest at that number. For the most part, things went as expected. Now, guys got to step up. Cam Jurgens has got to play well. Jacoby Dean's got to play well. Milton Williams has got to play well. These younger players, they have to step up, and that's the more difficult part of it.
Right.
But when I look at the owners' meetings, Jody, and the best evidence is Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson. We all saw the Lamar Jackson the minute John Harbaugh sits down, he sends a social media post about requesting a trade on March 2nd. I don't think that was a coincidence. But my larger point is, as good as Howie is, and remember, I'm the guy who said he was top 5 before most people thought he was top 5. He's got that luxury of Jeffrey Lurie. Man, these GMs got it tough. When they got to deal with you got to deal with Aaron Rodgers, and your guy, Joe Douglas, is now going to have to deal with it because eventually that's going to have to happen. And Brian Gutekunst and Eric DeCosta, who's sober, you got to deal with this stuff. It is a very, very, very difficult job.
Right. And the Eagles went through it just a couple of years ago with Carson Wentz and had to move on from him and take a massive dead salary cap hit because of it. So it isn't like the Eagles are immune from it. But your point of, Jeff Lurie rolls with the punches. He doesn't call the general manager and scream at, how did you get us into this mess? And I says, well, how do we get out of it? And they move on with their business thereafter. So you're right to give Lurie credit for that. We're expecting to hear from Jeff Lurie today, which should be entertaining. One of the main things you hit on that I do want to double back on is the change in defensive coordinator and the fact that, at least according to Howie, don't look for massive changes. The defense is what the defense is. Our new DC looks at things a lot like our old DC did. I certainly understand that is the case. But the signing they did over the weekend at least gave me hope that maybe there'd be some more flexibility with this year's defense. You sign a guy like Edmonds, who's a good, solid starter. You get him for relatively cheap, less than $2 million for a guy who started almost every game for the last 5 years for a good defense. That's pretty damn good signing. That's where Howie's Howie. And he is able to negotiate these pretty good contracts, team-friendly Eagle contracts for a guy like him. He's not the type of safety that the Eagles have been using the 2 years under Jonathan Gannon. So that does fly in the face of, here's our defense. We're going to get players who do exactly what we want in that defense. It seemed to me like they compromised a little bit with a guy like Edmonds. And I was hoping that was showing flexibility from Sean Desai. That was one of my few knocks on Jonathan Gannon, was he was always trying to put a round peg in a round hole and was never willing to shave it down to get that square peg to go into that round hole. No, either you play the defense the way I want it played, or you're not going to be able to see the field. Howie put a little bit of a damper on that yesterday. Our defense is going to be exactly the same. I'm not looking for massive changes. I'm not looking for Sean Desai to come in here and say, we're going to play a completely different defense. We knew it wasn't the case. We knew that he's a disciple of the type of defense that they play. But I just was looking for a little bit more flexibility. Do you think Howie took that off the table with what he said yesterday?
No, because, from your standpoint, like, I get it. You're going from where they were last year versus where they were year 1 to year 2. Like, I would call it forced flexibility. There might be more forced flexibility in the fact that they don't have the player to play what they want to do. So they play it a little differently. Like, you go back to what I'm trying to say is I'm not doing a good job of it. If you go back to 2021, well, Gerard Avery didn't play like Hassan Reddick. They didn't play the same defense. They didn't say, well, we need a Hassan Reddick, but we don't have Hassan Reddick. So we're just going to play Gerard Avery like we would play Hassan Reddick. But that was the first year. So I don't think people noticed it much because you got that player and then they played the way they wanted to play, and they should, because Hassan Reddick was a defensive player of the year candidate. He had a tremendous, tremendous season. But if he had signed a 1-year deal and he was out the door like CJ Gardner-Johnson, and you had to go back with some run-of-the-mill player, well, you're going to play differently. But that's forced flexibility. You don't want to do it. So, when you talk about, and I can't prove this, but my guess is they would, when Howie was talking about lottery tickets, they would hope that the lottery ticket that hits at safety is Justin Evans more than Terrell Edmonds, because Justin Evans, in theory, from what he was before the injury, what he was coming out of college, is the type of safety they want to play with. Now we'll see what happens when people get on the field. At this stage of the game, though, and Howie also said with limited resources, you got to do what you got to do. And maybe they said, well, this is the best guy we can get at this number. And maybe you have some forced flexibility and you have to play differently until the next off season, maybe not even the next off season, maybe a trade, maybe another CJ like trade. Who's CJ this year? Can you get somebody on August 30th who can fit the scheme?
Right.
I don't know. So there might be some more force flexibility. Like, I don't think Sean Desai, Jonathan didn't do it. For all the people want to say he didn't do it, they thought there's a lot of fans who thought the Eagles changed defensive schemes from year 1 to year 2.
No.
They didn't. They didn't play what they wanted to play as much in year 1 because they didn't have the players to do it. So there was forced flexibility from what he wanted to do. And I think you might see the 180 back to that, but not because they want to do it. Not because they want to do it is how I would explain it.
And even though somebody who do we have on yesterday who laid it out well that there will be a love affair with Sean Desai until the games actually start. That
Jeff Mosher.
Mosher, very good. Yeah, Mosher said everyone would just flat out love him because his name's not Gannon. So up until the Eagles play their first game, Sean Desai is going to be phenomenal and be well received by every single Eagle fan on the planet. And then if they don't blitz 27 times the first week, it's going to be, this guy's not aggressive.
Well, that I guarantee isn't happening. That I guarantee.
But the only thing I was saying, Sean Desai's defense, because at some point, the worm will turn. He doesn't have the resources that Jonathan Gannon had. Howie Roseman did the job, went out and got Hassan Reddick, went out and got CJ Gardner, who are not only very good players and had the phenomenal seasons that they had, they were scheme fit guys so that Gannon could play the defense the way that he wanted to play the defense, and they played it to the tune of the second best defense in the NFL last year. This defense just isn't as talented. They lost more than they've added to the defense during this offseason, and they've been forced to because of cap pressure. And as you also mentioned, it all hinges on Jalen Hurts' contract, which Howie again verbally said it is our intention. That's sooner rather than later. All that is just word salad until they actually get the deal done. And I don't think it's anywhere close to being done. I think this is going to drag on. I think that at some point it's going to start to get into a nervous zone for the Philadelphia Eagles because they haven't got their contract.
I'm telling you, same thing with Landon. Do not get nervous. Do not get nervous. I would say that if people who were expecting the deal after the season, just don't understand how the NFL works. I would say, first week of June, and again, I go back to Carson Wentz, I believe was June 6th. I would say, look at June 1st to June 10th. I would say right off the bat. And if they can't get it done from June 1st to June 10th, then the next circle, and we're going to be talking about it all summer, unfortunately, but the next point would be right before camp. Would be the week before camp. In other words, there's not going to be grinding out negotiations between June 10th and July 17th, say. They're going to go on vacation. Everybody's going to go away. Nobody's going to talk about anything. That's sort of the way the NFL works. So those are the two windows. But, man, I mean, we know enough about Jalen Hurts. He's not going to be Lamar Jackson. He's not going to be Brett Favre. The Eagles are going to be fair to him. He's going to be fair to the Eagles. And by the way, when I say fair, I don't mean these knuckleheads saying he's going to take a team-friendly deal. No, he's going to get his money, but he's not going to sit there with no agent and turn down fully guaranteed contracts and say, I want Deshaun Watson fully 5 years guaranteed money. If he does that, it would be antithetical to everything I've ever seen about Jalen Hurts from the day he stepped in this building. I don't think it's going to happen. I put a scale, 99.9% not worried about any of it. He's going to be a Philadelphia Eagle.
You're a little bit more optimistic than me because everything you said and how you just described Jalen Hurts was certainly on point. But none of Jalen Hurts' behavior that we've seen, ability to evaluate him as a young man and everything else, had anything to do with a contract negotiation. Those can be completely different from everything else a young guy shows and or displays and or his personality, whatever else. The Eagles have never really negotiated a contract with Jalen Hurts. He was a second-round pick. He was slotted in. It was easy doing for a 4-year deal, and you moved on. So although we feel we've got a good grasp on what kind of a young man that Jalen Hurts is and how he goes about doing his business and the like, this is basically new territory that's never been traversed before. No one's ever gotten down this road with Jalen Hurts. So just it doesn't always. It's not 99.9%. The person's personality dictates the way contract negotiations are going to go. That just doesn't happen. Sometimes guys who are pain in the rear end and have issues and get themselves in trouble, whatever, but negotiations are easy. And then there are other guys who are model citizens, but when it comes to money, yeah, that's where they get their agent to draw hard lines and they make it difficult on both parties. Don't know. We don't know. None of us know. John McMullen doesn't know. Jody McDonald doesn't know. I don't think Howie Roseman knows.
I think he knows. That's why he spoke with such certainty. I mean, Howie's not exactly sweating. I'll have to get the actual quotes. I'll look them up during the break. We want him here long term. Obviously, he's going in the last year of his deal, and so that's going to be a priority for us. And then he went into, at the end of the day, we're not looking to do anything other than what's fair for us and fair for our players. I think that dynamic about it, what everyone else is doing, we have to do what's best for us. I don't know what we necessarily spend. He was talking about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Sure. And he mentioned something about him leaving and not being a concern. If that's the end game, I assume, but for people that are worried, the end game would be about him leaving. He's not leaving. So
he can't go anywhere because he's certainly the type of guy you would put a franchise tag on. So he's going nowhere at the end of this year. The worst case scenario is he gets slapped with a franchise tag. But here's the one thing that Howie doesn't control. And we can all sing Howie's praises, but there's just some things a general manager can't do. He's only one side of the negotiation. And this is why I think we're going into June, if not into July. If the other side says, no, we want to see the market established, there's been no movement in the starting quarterback market, not top end. Herbert hasn't signed, Burrow hasn't signed, Lamar Jackson hasn't gotten a contract done. We don't want to go first. Howie, we appreciate you're in the neighborhood. We're telling you what kind of but we don't want to go first. We want someone else to set the market. Howie can't force them. He can't force that. No matter how good he feels about it, no matter how motivated he is, he can't force the other side to take a deal because they hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
What I would say is when you're talking about 50 million or so, and I'll put it at 48 to 52. When you're talking about 48 or 52, and then you're talking about going first, and then say Justin Herbert's second, and he gets 53 or 54, and Joe Burrow gets 55. Once you're up in that stratosphere, remember, people can talk about leverage all they want. It's the same thing I talk about with the Packers and Jets. That everyone says, not everyone, but a lot of people say the Packers have leverage. No, they don't. They don't want that knucklehead showing up to training camp. They don't want $60 million looming over their heads. They got to do something. Watch, they're going to do something long before July 27th or whenever they're going to report to training camp, because they don't want him there, and especially him. They don't want him on the Pat McAfee show every stinking week, airing the dirty laundry. It's not worth it. And then the second part is Jalen hasn't made significant money. He's made significant money for me, for Jody McDonald, maybe not for Ricky Ricardo. I know we got to get the break. Ricky's in the green room. He hasn't made significant money yet. He's going to sit and wait for an extra $2 million when we're talking 50 versus 52. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. Especially with the way he plays the game. I mean, you do have to be realistic and say, what if he gets hurt? I'm not risking my future for $2 million when I'm getting $50 million a year.
Okay,
that's just
but we assume that Howie Roseman is going to put 48 to 52 on the table.
Oh, I'm very confident of that.
We don't know that yet. That's to be determined.
Well, we just talked about. Is there any evidence that Jeffrey Lurie's going cheap at the quarterback position?
Well, they went cheap at the safety position this year offseason, didn't they, John?
They
didn't get the TJ Johnson thing done.
We're comparing safety position in the Eagles with quarterback.
They gave Carson Wentz position with any other position on the Eagles.
They gave Carson Wentz, with all his injury history, the largest contract in franchise history on June 6th when he was eligible for an extension. At the time, the largest contract in franchise history. Not even a blip on the radar. I expect the same thing this time around.
How'd that Carson contract work out for them?
That's a valuation. I'm talking about Jeffrey Lurie willing to put the trigger. Now you're moving the goalpost.
Of course I'm moving the goalpost because you have to look at the whole picture. You're looking at a condensed version of the picture.
You're talking about contracts. Now you're talking about it didn't work out because of the player. Why are you trying to say? Because it didn't work out with the player, they're not going to offer the contract to Jalen Hurts?
Oh, no, we've never seen that before. Teams become gun-shy because they made a certain decision. And
that would be your better argument.
Your decision. That's never happened before.
Jody, your original argument was they're going to have trouble signing Jalen Hurts. That's your original argument. Now you're talking about Carson Wentz as a player. What does that have to do? You could kill them all they want for him not turning into the player they thought he was going to be. That's fine. That's fine. I even think that's all base, but that's fine. But they offered him the contract, the largest contract in franchise history. They're not going cheap. This is not a cheap team. You got to worry about that with Cincinnati. You got to worry about that with the Chargers. They might even, I talk about escrow all the time. Cincinnati might not even have the stinking money to put in escrow to pay Joe Burrow. But that's their problem. There's no evidence. Now, if you want to argue Jalen Hurts isn't going to turn into the player we all think he is, that's a different argument.
No, I'm not even going there. I'm just saying, and if you don't believe this, that's fine. That's your call. We've seen organizations, including the Philadelphia Eagles, after they've done a deal, and it hasn't worked out, not valuation, evaluation, all things being added in after the fact, then making deals going forward, keeping that in mind, that we had done this before and it didn't work out for us. I'm not telling you that is the way the Eagles are going to handle Jalen Hurts. I'm just not dismissing it as a possibility that it's going to be part of the decision-making process and could factor in that the last time they did a franchise quarterback-like deal with Carson Wentz, it didn't work out. That's all I'm saying. If you say, Jody, it's irrelevant and they have completely washed it from their brain and they won't be affected by it, you might be right. That's your opinion. My opinion is I think it's at least part of the mind.
Well, I will say the GM's already on record. They already made the decision. He's already on record. It's a priority for us. He said it 3 times now. We want to get it done this offseason. He said it 3 times. Right, he's already made the decision. Now it's about just hammering out the details of the decision. He's already made the decision.
I understand that, but hammering out the details of the decision is a negotiation, and sometimes negotiations don't go smoothly. What you want to do, what you hope to do, and then the reality of actually getting it done doesn't always match up 100% lockstep. That's my point. I think it's going to be more difficult than some Eagle fans think. There are people out there saying they'll get it done before the combine. Yeah,
well, they don't understand. That's different because they don't understand the business of the NFL. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. You can look around the league. It doesn't happen with the Eagles. There are certain windows you look at. I try to explain to people the windows you look at. They can listen. They cannot listen. There are certain windows where this kind of stuff happens. June 1st is a big bookkeeping day of the year for the NFL because you can toggle things between 1 year and the next year. That's why it's a big deal. That's a big deal for Jake Rosenberg. That's a big deal for Howie Roseman. Most teams, not the Eagles, because and we got to get to Ricky. Most teams wait and and that's why training camp becomes a big deal, because people want to get things done before training camp starts. But the Eagles, you can't compare the Eagles to Cincinnati. You can't compare the Eagles to the Chargers. There are certain teams that do things certain ways and certain teams that can't do things those ways. And that's why I give Jeffrey Lurie credit, because of all the stuff. And that's why I brought up Brian Gutekunst and Joe Douglas and Eric DeCosta. It's easier for Howie Roseman because of his owner. It's easier.
Yeah.
And that should be pointed out.
Lurie is a smart and aggressive and financially flexible owner. I'm just saying it's going to take time, Eagle fans. Be patient. Some want it already done. Some want it done this week. Since we're talking Eagles, they're out there. Jeff Lurie's he's going to answer the same questions today. I'll guarantee you there's no deal done this week or by the end of this month. And I'd be quite surprised if it got done in April once they get into draft mode. So, yeah, we're well into May or June. And then I'm just saying people get a little bit more nervous as the days just keep clicking off the calendar. And despite the fact that Howie Roseman can use the word priority all he wants, until you get a deal done, it's not a done deal. And priority is nice. Signature on a piece of paper is what you need to accomplish. All right. We made Ricky Ricardo wait for 10 minutes. We apologize to him. We'll get a quick timeout in here, then come back and talk all things Eagles with the voice of the Eagles and Espanol. Ricky Ricardo next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on.